Elsie Jensen here today. We are going to be making some homemade pasta with a homemade pasta sauce, like a little ragu. And then I have some chicken already started roasting in the oven that we'll also have with our meal tonight. But let's start by getting our onion sauteing up for our homemade pasta sauce. I'm going to use one yellow onion here, and we are going to dice it up and start sauteing it until we've got a nice caramelization on it. And then I have, I just whipped up some homemade pasta dough, which you have to let it rest for about 30 minutes so that it is more elastic and easier to roll out. And so we're going to start rolling that out for our pasta that we're going to have in here. And then I have some leftover sourdough bread that I'm going to turn into some cheesy garlic bread. Let's get our onions diced and starting to saute, bring out their flavors. We're going to saute up a bunch of vegetables. Then we are going to kind of simmer them for a little bit and then puree them into a lovely kind of a ragu. It'll be delicious, or more like a bolognese, whatnot. Let's get our olive oil in my big pan here. This is my big 6-quart saute pan. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in here. And mainly because I have such a big pan, I want to make sure I have enough in there. And we're going to start sauteing this over a medium heat right at around a 5. So I'm going to put all of my onions in here. And then once they start to caramelize up and get a nice kind of golden color on them, we will toss in some diced up carrots and peppers and tomatoes and all that jazz.
Yeah, question. How did soccer go today?
It went well. It was a very, very long day. We had to get up at like 5:45 this morning to drive to Kentucky. So that was a long time. My younger daughter's team, they lost both of their games, but my daughter was the only one to get a goal. So I was really happy about that. She had this amazing goal. And then my older daughter's team, it was like they won really well. They won 9-0. We ended up ending the game early because of the mercy rule. So that's good. I think we have our district championship starting on Monday. So we're excited for that. I've got my pasta dough right here. I'm going to keep what I'm not using right now wrapped up to keep it moist and getting nice and soft and tender. I realize I need to get a little rolling pin over here. Will make it easier for me to get it through my pasta sheet. So for my pasta dough, it's really simple to make homemade pasta. You just actually takes a lot of kneading. So for this big lump of dough here, I had like 4.5 cups of flour, 7 whole eggs, like a teaspoon and a half of olive oil, and like a teaspoon of salt. And then you just knead it together for like 10-15 minutes until you get a nice elasticy dough. And then you let it sit for 30 minutes. Okay, we're going to put it through our pasta roller here. Let me put it back on one. And we're going to roll through a couple of sheets, and then we'll kind of go back and forth. I'm going to grab my crazy little pasta tree right here, which is great for putting our pasta on for when we need to. It would help if I plugged my our KitchenAid in here. Very key. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this guy on, and I'm going to feed him through a couple of times. But as long as you did a pretty good knead on it, you should have a fairly elastic dough. There we go. So now I'm going to go through. I fold them back over. Now it should go through much more nicely. And this right now, we're going through like our fattest kind of setting, and then I kind of speed it up and we go through each one on there. So that's at a 1. And then we'll go through at a 2. We'll kind of put it out, and then I'll go give our onions a quick stir here. Once you get past the first one, you can go a little faster. And now I'm going to jump to a 4. And there we'll have our first pasta sheet done on here. And again, I'm going to hang it or drape it over my little pasta tree. And then we will take it, after we've made a bunch, we'll kind of take it out. Here we go. But now look how long one sheet is here.
You got a question? How were the kids at the restaurant yesterday?
You know what? Oops. They were actually really, really well behaved. It was like our first time in a while that Jack had been really well behaved. So it was actually quite nice. I'm gonna grab my scissors because this one's quite long. That way I can put it over too. There we go. Because you don't want your pasta sheets to sit on top of each other for very long, or what will happen is they will stick together because I haven't dusted them with flour yet. And so let's carefully get this here, pull it out. And I always say work and put them on opposite sides of each other so you can balance it. Sometimes before I got pasta trees, I've had these for a while, I would put them over the backs of my chairs and let them dry right there. They'd be everywhere, all over my house. Anywhere I could find a ledge, I'd have a sheet of pasta kind of laying over it. Okay, let's give our onions a quick stir here since we've got it nice and popping here. We'll push that down. And okay, let's get our second thing out. So we're going to be doing kind of two on here. I've got my regular pasta cutter. This makes the sheets. And then we're going to do our fettuccine. But what I like to do is I like to roll out the majority of my pasta first before I switch it off to my other pasta head. This is also great for just doing fresh lasagna sheets. So it kind of was wonderful if you want to just stop right there and then you make your own homemade lasagna. With fresh pasta, it boils up actually like really, really fast. It cooks like in a fraction of the time that regular pasta cooks. So when we actually go to boil this is only going to take about 3 minutes. So remember, always set it back on 1, and then we're going to put it through, and it's going to go through nice and slow. Don't try to put it up really fast and through, because what we'll do, it will tear your pasta. And then my first one always tears a little bit because I never take the time to roll it out super thin that first time through, because what I do instead is I'm just going to fold it in half and over, and this will give me a really nice sheet. So it just works a little bit better going this way. And now we can speed it up just a little bit. While we're going out, I'm going to give my onions. Oh, here's what happens when you try to go and do two things at one time. Give my onions a little stir. Good thing I have lots of spoons. Too many. Here we go. I just don't want my onions to burn. When you cook on a metal pan versus a non-cooked surface, it heats up pretty fast, and that can cause it to burn if you look away for too long.
You have a question? Did you knead the dough?
I did. So this dough, I kneaded it for about 15 minutes by hand. I find kneading by hand works better than doing it with a dough hook, because you really can break those gluten chains, and it just kind of works a little better. And then I'm going to skip it up to a 4, and we'll get this through, and then we'll have this sheet done. And then we're going to peel up some carrots and start adding our carrots for our sauce. There we go. Perfect.
Are there any chefs that inspire you?
I actually have a couple that I really love. I mean, my first one I feel like is such a common one that I almost feel like it's cheating when you say it, but I love Gordon Ramsay. And I think it's because I grew up with Gordon Ramsay in the sense of all of his shows became really popular when I was a kid, Hell's Kitchen, Kitchen Nightmares. I loved all of those shows. And then now he has the Master Chef or whatever. Yeah, I think that's the Master Chef that he went. So I love him, although I don't watch hardly any TV nowadays, which it's not as much fun. And I think he's funny and hilarious how when he was with the kids, he's like a sweetheart and really nice, but with adults, he's so mean. Um, but I like him a lot and his story. But the other person that I really love, it's like she's not as popular now, but I really loved Rachel Ray because she wasn't about making everything super bougie and fancy. It was like real food, cooking, around making it like affordable. And I thought she was a fun personality. Um, and I want to say, I think those are kind of my two favorite, although they're super popular. I know there's so many more out there, and I've been to a couple of the fancy restaurants, but honestly, I don't really keep up with so much. I mean, I love you know, Jamie Oliver and stuff, but I still think my favorite is Gordon Ramsay. I know it's kind of basic, but I love it. I love the fact that he was, a pro soccer player before he got injured. And I love soccer. Um, but yeah. Okay, let's get these carrots. I'm gonna give them a quick peel, and then we're gonna dice them up pretty finely so we can saute them and get some nice kind of caramelization on them as well. Give this a good stir for this. But I'm going to do my pasta in stages, break it up. So, because pasta can be boring sometimes, just watching it go over and over. Before I put these in, though, because my onion's there, I've got some garlic we're going to add in. I finally found somebody was talking about how you can get like the whole garlic from, if I can cut this open, the store. And most of the time, as much as I love fresh garlic, it's such a pain to try to peel it and get to shell it. So this one's a little bit closer than just garlic. So we're going to use about 4, maybe let's do 6, because I love garlic. So let's mince this up. So while it's not quite fresh garlic, it's a little bit more fresh than fresh garlic. So we're going to mince it up and add it in here. Let it saute as well, because again, we're going to be pureeing our vegetables that we're going to saute up, and then after we simmer, to make this just really rich vegetable sauce, like a ragu, which I'm kind of excited for because I love pasta and homemade pasta. And then we'll serve it with our chicken. So let's get these guys up nice and minced. I was trying to figure out all day, what should I cook? Because from 5:45 this morning until like not even an hour ago, we were out and about all day. It's kind of crazy. My younger daughter, we had to go all the way to Kentucky, and it was a 2.5 hour drive, but then they were on Eastern time zone. So we then had to get up earlier to compensate from that, but we luckily got an hour back coming here, but it was still a long time in the car. Let's get our minced up garlic in here. Give it a quick stir, let it saute up. Just keep an eye on your garlic because it will go from being golden brown to burnt in no time. And I like to get it a little bit of brown, like it's, kind of a golden brown, but you don't want it to go black. I'm going to turn it down to about a 4 now. And then we're going to get these carrots in there. On there. And for the carrots, because I do want them to get tender pretty quickly, I'm going to kind of dice them up. I'm going to quarter them and then dice them up fairly fine so they'll get nice and soft. The carrots add a lovely sweetness to the sauce. I'm not a big fan of adding extra sugar into things or into savory things. So the carrots naturally add in some sweetness along with the onions that are being caramelized here.
Yeah, question. What part of the grocery store can you find the garlic?
So for this, it's in the refrigerated section. So you have to go with, where they have the refrigerated spices. That's where it is, where they have, like they'll have even diced up onions and stuff like that, or the herb paste. They had the whole garlic cloves there. So I was like, it's a win because they're just a lot more fragrant and fresh tasting. Here we go. Give this a stir. And I will say the garlic smell is amazing. And it does smell different than using garlic. So it's a hit. I hadn't been able to find them for a while, but I'm glad I did. Okay, we got part of our carrots in there, but let's get the rest of these chopped up and added in. Let them saute. We're going to use a lot of fresh vegetables in today's sauce. I've got like a bunch of tomatoes. We'll have bell pepper in there. I am going to also use some tomato paste to just make it a little bit richer for that. We've got our carrots. But think about almost like a vegetable bisque, but we're going to turn it into a sauce for our pasta. So it'll be just fabulous. And then in my oven, we'll take our chicken out in a little bit, but it's been roasting in there. A whole chicken takes about 75 minutes at 425 to roast up in the oven. So it'll come out here in like 15 or so minutes. And then it needs to sit for a little bit before you cut into it. Okay, let's get these guys. And let's get to our next kind of set of sheets of our thing, but we've already got 4 ones down. And I don't even know if I'm going to actually use up all of this pasta. So I might save some for another day. Maybe I'll make some homemade lasagna this week with the remaining for this. Because I will say homemade pasta is much denser and richer than store-bought. So I feel like you end up eating actually a lot less of it because it is a lot more hearty. Let's give us a good roll. And you always want to start it out a little bit thinner so that you can get it through here without tearing it while it stretches it. Get it going through. Okay. And this one I'm going to again fold it over. And we'll put it in right there. And this just allows it to stretch up really nicely.
You have a question, what kind of pasta are you making?
So this is just a basic egg pasta. I'm going to cut it into, I have a fettuccine mold that we're going to use to cut it. So I'll use that for the shape, but this is just an egg pasta. Nothing super fancy. I was debating about whether I wanted to roast up my pumpkin and make some pumpkin pasta within a pumpkin bolognese sauce, but another day. I said that's something my mom would really like, and she's going out of town, so I didn't want to make it because she would be sad if she didn't get it. Okay, we've got this one. Let me grab my little scissors here. So all my kitchen shears have gone missing, so I gotta go find them. I have 5 of them. My kids have got them somewhere in this house. It's funny, I have a whole drawer full of regular scissors, but they only ever find my kitchen shears to use. Okay. Get this one on there, and then we're going to give our pasta a little bit of a stir here. Here we go. And we're going to, perfect. We're getting, you see, we've got this nice kind of golden color forming on our onions. They're starting to get nice and translucent. I'm going to chop up my my bell pepper here, and we're going to add that in to saute. Then we'll get our tomatoes in, our fresh herbs, tomato paste, then our tomatoes, and then we'll let it simmer, and then we'll puree it to make this lovely sauce. Just getting out any of these seeds. For our peppers, again, since we're going to puree them, I don't have to do a super small dice on it because I'm not doing like a traditional ragu where you just, chop it up and dice it and cook it. We're going to do that puree to give it that silky smooth kind of texture. On here. Okay. So a couple little chops here. I find with bell peppers, if you cut them from the inside versus from the outside in, it's easier to cut through. The skin on the outside can be rather slick, but the inside has a nice texture to it, which allows your knife to grip it a little bit better. There we go. Let's toss these guys in. Beautiful. Let me give this a good stir. Kind of coat all of our veggies up with that residual oil in here. And let it stop. I'm going to turn up my burner now that I have a good amount of veggies in here. I'm going to bring it back up to about a 5 so it can start to saute up nicely. And then we're going to roll out one more sheet of pasta, and then we're going to do our fettuccine because I'm going to save part of this dough to make like a small lasagna. But this is, again, I mean, this makes a lot of pasta. I use 7 eggs in it and 4 cups of flour, or 4.5 cups of flour. And the more it sits, the more like velvety it gets with that. That's why you should never just make pasta right away and roll it out. It needs to sit so that flour can hydrate and that gluten can really, develop. Okay, let's get this through here. Beautiful. This one is nice. We'll slide it through. And then we'll jump all the way to a 4.
How long do you have the dough sit for?
A minimum of 30 minutes to sit. I've had this one sitting for probably closer to 45 minutes now that we've started, which the longer it sits, the more malleable it is. But right now we've got a good amount of pasta that will feed us tonight. So I think I'll stick with that. I'm gonna give our veggies a nice stir here. And must have popped one out. We're gonna get some fresh herbs in there. We'll get our tomato paste cooking. And we'll get our fettuccine rolled out. So we'll take the sheets and turn it into fettuccine. So here I've got some fresh oregano. I'm going to just take off the stems here. I figured got to use the rest of our fresh herbs up. I was kind of like going through and I was like, what do I have in my kitchen that I need to use up now because it's going to go bad soon. So this is kind of a meal where it'll kind of be a little bit fancy, but I'm actually just using up leftovers of everything because it's just a great way to do that. Making like a homemade pasta sauce or homemade, it's just a great way to use up some extras. So I've got that will be about a teaspoon of fresh oregano. And then I've got some fresh thyme here that I'm going to pull these leaves off. I had fresh basil. I was going to go out and get it, but I realized I put my sprinkler on, and so to get to it, I'd have to turn the sprinkler off and all that. So we're just going to use some dry basil because that was too much work for me. Okay, let's get these chopped up and in there and minced up. The more cuts you can make on these herbs, the more that they'll release into our sauce. So we're going to mince it up nice and fine, almost to make like an herby paste. So just put it there. And I find the best way to really mince up your vegetables, or not your vegetables, but your spices, is just to place your hand on your blade and then to rock it over. This is going to allow you to do nice and small cuts over it and chop it up nice and finely. Don't do this. This will take forever. But really push your hand down and then just rock. It's much easier movement and you'll mince it up a lot faster. Okay, let's add these in there. We'll give this a good stir. And it smells lovely for that. And these are, again, we've got onions, peppers, carrots, garlic, fresh oregano, and fresh thyme. Let's add in some dry basil. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of dried basil. And we'll add our bay leaf in once we add a little bit of broth in here, but we'll do that for right now. Kind of toast it up. I like it to get a little bit of heat first. And then we're going to add in some tomato paste, and then we'll eventually add in our diced tomatoes.
You have a question? Are there any knives that you recommend?
Yes, I will say I've got the knife I'm using right now is part of my Wusthof set that I got for my wedding. almost 17 years ago. So this knife is 17 years old and it is still going strong. This is the Wusthof Classic. I've got their whole little knife set and they work wonderful. It comes with like a honing steel, so it's really easy to sharpen it up. I added these into my Amazon storefront, so there should be there. Wusthof also makes a more affordable version of it. So the classic is their iconic one that's been around forever. They also have the Wusthof Gourmet, which is the main difference I've found between it is the Gourmet is much lighter. It's not as heavy and as sturdy of a knife, but it is very sharp and it works really well. I have it at my mom's outdoor kitchen that I like to cook at, and I use it there. Okay, we've got these sauteing up. We've got them coated with that tomato paste, so we're going to let them kind of go through and saute them. And we're going to go through now and do our fettuccine part. So I'm going to take off my flat part, and we're going to do, this is a set of 3, and it comes with like a angel hair and one as well, which I love. It goes with your KitchenAid one. Okay. And then I'm just going to grab ours. And you're just going to roll it through. Now the trick is to catch it at the other end. I'm going to turn it up a little bit faster. And it just makes beautiful little fettuccine pasta. So I'm going to hang it over. And then once I've got them up, then I'll kind of toss them. But this allows them to sit there and go through and dry out without sticking to each other. There we go. And you got to just make sure you let it kind of slide and glide with it. Okay. Slide and glide, yeah. You know, got to get a little bit fancy here. Okay. Let me turn that off. I'm going to dust these with a little bit of flour on here to get them going. And then I'm just going to dust all of my sheets. That way I don't have to dust them afterwards, because it's actually a little bit easier to dust your sheet first than it is after. Slide these apart. So you just use a little bit of flour. Semolina flour, of course, is always the best, but I'm a big fan of not just going out and buying extra stuff. Whoop. Lost my thing there. No worries. Another way, if you don't have one of these, you make a nest. So you coat it up in your flour like this, and you want to make sure you coat it, and then you just twist it in a nest. So you have it, and when you're ready to drop it in. But make sure it's well coated with flour, otherwise they'll stick together.
No question. Do you have a cookbook or plans on making one?
So I definitely am going to plan on making one. For right now, I do have recipe cards for my members, and I send out about 3 recipe cards each week. And I think I have up almost 75 recipe cards out there for our members on there. I think tomorrow we'll have a post up with some new ones. But we also have our like a digital one, in the sense that we upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So you can definitely go and rewatch those and cook everything that we make here. Okay, let's get this guy in. I'm just going to coat him up with some flour.
And how much pasta does your dough make?
This dough one makes, I'm not even using all of it tonight, because what we have, right, each sheet here will feed like 1 person, because it's a good amount. Let me get this a stir real quick. But yes, it makes a good amount of pasta. I will say, if I did a double batch for our family, I'm trying to make about 8 servings, but half batch would definitely make 4 servings of meal size, because it does get bigger as it expands as you cook it. And it's much more filling than basic pasta dough.
Do you have the recipe posted for the dough?
I do not have the recipe posted for the dough, but I might make that a recipe card. But I will definitely go right through it. So how I made this dough today, I used, I'm going to go over here. We'll let that sit for a second. We used 7 eggs, whole eggs. So first you're going to start with 4.5 cups of flour, and you're going to put them on your countertop, like not in a bowl, but on your countertop. And you're going to make a little bit of a well with it. So essentially make a big hole in the middle of it. And you're going to then put your eggs in there with about 2 teaspoons of olive oil and a teaspoon of salt. And this gets to be the messy part. You're going to work on incorporating those together with your hands. And you're going to be sticky, and it's going to be a hot mess in the beginning. And then you're going to knead it together until you've got a nice dough. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes. The more you knead, the softer your pasta dough will be. If you don't knead it for very long, you'll have a stiff pasta dough. So this is one where I recommend you knead it for a long time, 15 minutes, as I always say. It's a good workout. Put a show on and knead as you watch a show or something. And then you wrap it up in like a plastic wrap or put it in a Ziploc baggie, and you let it sit for at minimum 30 minutes for that to get a nice elasticity to it. And then you can start rolling it out. You can, just coat it up well with flour. And then you could either put it in a bag and save it in like a freezer till you're ready to use, or cook it up right away. And it only takes about 3 to 4 minutes to boil up in a pan. Right now we're adding in our diced tomatoes here. We're gonna mix them in, and these are kind of the base part of our sauce. We already have our tomato paste in here, but we'll add a little bit of our liquid as well, and then we'll puree this.
You have a question? Can you skip the egg in the dough?
You cannot skip the egg in the dough, not for this recipe. The egg is essential for this to get nice kind of ribbon. If you skip the egg in the dough, you're going to have a very different type of pasta, which won't be as nice and lovely. You're going to have to kind of, for those, there you can do some pasta doughs that don't have egg in it, but you have to kind of do different variations. Okay, let's get these last ones in. And then we're actually going to go pop over and take a peek at our chicken that's roasting in the oven, because it's been about 75 minutes, which means I'm ready to take it out, and it needs to sit for about 15 minutes before you kind of serve it. So let's go grab that out. I've had it roasting at 425, so it should have like this darker brown, crispy skin on it. And my trick with my my chicken is I make this kind of oil marinade rub, looking beautiful, that I place underneath the skin and on top of it. Gorgeous. So once I get it over here and on a trivet, I'll tell you all about how I seasoned it up and jazz.
You have a question about the pasta dough? Can you not use the machine and just roll it out and cut it?
Yes, you can definitely roll it out and cut it. Just make sure you roll it nice and thin, and you can cut it. There is a trick for rolling it out and cutting it, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But this is our chicken. We use rosemary, onions, garlic, and lemon juice and olive oil and garlic salt. So what I do is I lift up the skin and I rub all of this under, which you can see where the skin's peeling off, but it's nice and crispy. It's stuffed with onions and lemons to give that the acid of the lemons really make it nice and juicy and flavorful. And it's going to be lovely. The trick to keeping your chicken juicy when you roast it in the oven is you need to let it sit for about 15 minutes. The same thing with turkey before carving into it. Because if you carve into it while it's hot, what happens is all the juices fall out. So let it sit so that they can really stay and make your chicken nice and juicy. Okay, we've got our tomatoes in here. Let's add in a little bit of water. I've got 2 cups of water here, and then we're going to add in a scoop of vegetable broth or a vegetable bouillon, because this is what we're going to puree up and to make our sauce. So let me get this. And then we'll work our garlic bread together, because that won't take long. We'll boil up our pasta once our sauce is pureed, and we'll be able to eat here. We're going to do a nice, because I'm going to use this in place of some of the salt. So a nice tablespoon of bouillon. So, because I want it to be the main base of salt for all of this instead of adding an additional. Here we go. We're going to stir it in and really bring up our flavors nicely. Beautiful. So good. Mix it in, and then I'm going to let it come to a simmer, and we'll let that just simmer and get nice and soft. And this is going to be our sauce for our pasta. Let's get these. We already got some of them kind of hanging out. I probably can get some of this to hang out now over. But as you can see, we've got already quite a lot of noodles here.
Good question. What kind of bouillon?
So that is vegetable bouillon, which I love because I'm making a vegetable kind of bolognese here, or, you know, a little bit stuck here. So let me grab this off. But you could also use chicken bouillon, would work as well. I wouldn't use like a beef one on there. I think that's a little bit too hearty.
Can you go back to talking about rolling out the fettuccine?
Yes. Yeah. So if you want to do it out here, I can actually show you with this one, although this, I'll show you with the next one because yeah, we'll do it with this one. So the way to do it, simple. Let me grab a knife here. Make sure you've got your sheet well floured. And then what you're going to do is you're essentially going to roll it up like this so that it's easier to cut. And then kind of just take off that one. And you just cut all the way through. So you see, it's actually not that much work for it. And then you just kind of roll them out. You just don't want to leave them in there stuck too long, but make sure when you do this method, make sure that they are well coated in flour, because if they're too damp, they'll stick together. And then just toss it a couple of times like this. Voila. And you can even do like pappardelle, which is those really thick noodles. You can do this for this. So you see, it's a really simple method. You can actually cut them even smaller and to make angel hair. So you don't have to have a pasta rolling machine. I feel like if you're making a lot of pasta for a lot of people, a pasta rolling machine is great. And since we're a large family, you know, it works well for us. But if you're just making it for a small batch, that is also fine. But again, make sure you have it well coated with flour. I think that's the biggest mistake, is people don't coat it with enough flour and then it sticks together and then all their hard work is kind of ruined. Here we go. Give this a good stir. And now let's get these through here. And this just makes it uniform and easy. There we go. I'll slide it through. Perfect. And again, we'll hang it over there. I've got it on here, but pretty close. So here's their fettuccine. I made mine a little bit thicker, but again, still just about the same. We've got 2 more sheets left to roll out here on there. And then, you know what, actually, I was almost think we might take a pause here and make our garlic bread to put in the oven, because then I can roll those 2 out and we can pop them in there. That way we can get that start to bake up. Let's give this a good stir. I'm going to slide this guy out of the way, since we aren't going to really need him too much anymore. So I'm going to make a really simple garlic bread. I have some leftover sourdough bread from the other day, and I'm going to just slice it up, spread it with some butter and garlic salt and cheese and Parmesan for this. Let's slide that over there while our lovely vegetables and sauce are simmering here. Give it a good stir. So here it's my traditional loaf that we baked up. And this, I will say, I was gonna, you know, it's great for making grilled cheese sandwiches, but it's also really delicious to re-toast in the oven for garlic bread. So instead of cutting it this way, I'm actually gonna just cut off an edge right here, and then we'll slice it this way. So I'll have kind of little half pieces for it. And this will be so good to dip in our sauce as well as in our, just to eat straight up. I said, my Evie always loves garlic bread. She's always like, can we have garlic bread? Can we have garlic bread? And she's the one who typically doesn't like anything. Okay. I think we can use these last ones on there. Just kind of cut. And then I'm going to lay them again on a baking sheet. We'll pop them in. I didn't turn off my oven, I believe, so it should still be nice and hot in there. Let's get this guy stirred. And you want to keep your simmering fairly high because you want it to kind of reduce off some of that liquid so that when we go to puree it, it will be nice and thick. Okay. Let's grab parchment paper. That way any of my, slide this over here, parchment paper, because we're going to put cheese on it. And if you do it on the baking sheet, your cheese will stick down. There we go. I'm running out of room, guys. Okay, so I'm just going to do, again, super simple. I've got some softened butter here. You don't need a whole lot, just a nice little spread on each one, enough to get nice and crispy. And then we'll sprinkle some garlic salt, and then I've got Parmesan cheese and mozzarella. But I'm going to butter them all up on here, and then we'll put them on our sheet, and we'll get our cheese going. If you don't have a butter paddle, get one. My kids talk about whenever the butter paddle goes missing, they're like, where did it go? Where's the butter knife? And I'm like, oh, just use a regular knife. And they're like, no, I can't. Okay. Let's get these on here. I always feel like, so growing up, I feel like there is two households you grew up. You either grew up in a household that had butter always sitting out on the counter, or you grew up in one where the butter was in the fridge and always cold, which is what I grew up in. My husband always had nice soft butter, and I will say I like my butter out on the counter nice and soft because when it's cold, it doesn't melt well over your toast. And when you eat homemade sourdough bread, you need butter. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt. And we're going to do 2 layers of garlic salt, so don't go too heavy on it. A light sprinkle. And then we're going to add our mozzarella first. And I find that a whole milk mozzarella melts and is much nicer for toasting up than like the part skim. There we go. And again, just a little kind of cheese nest on each one. And don't go super thick because then you're not gonna, it won't crisp up nicely. And you want it to have a good kind of crisp to it. Then we're gonna add our Parmesan. And these are like Parmesan flakes or like shavings. Here we go. And the Parmesan is going to give you a crunchier crisp than it. The mozzarella is going to give you a more of a chewy cheese. And then, of course, we'll finish up with a little bit of our garlic salt. We'll get these in the oven.
Question. Have you ever made a sourdough pizza crust before?
I have a lot. So whenever I do cooking over at my mom's house, she has an outdoor pizza oven. And I think I do it probably almost once a week now. I have a really great pizza crust that I love. And I use it for cheese bread and pizza crust. And it is awesome. So yes, let's pop this in here. There we go. If you go onto the link of our page and you find any of our pizza recipes, I talk about it in there because it is a really great one. And I have completely converted. I used to always make a yeast pizza dough, but ever since I switched over to a sourdough one, it's just so much better. And then recently, I decided to try the bougie 00 flour to see if it made a difference, and it did. And so I think I'm going to be sticking with, for when I do pizzas, using the 00 flour. Let's get this guy through. And then these can cook up pretty soon. I don't want to cook them too soon because I want to be able to throw them into my pasta sauce. So once my pasta sauce is blended up, we'll throw those in here. But let's get we've got these. We've got one more sheet to go. Let's slide this over here. And just got to gently pull it off. And then again, be generous with the flour. I don't feel like you can go too much because it will just fall off if you have too much. Now, again, semolina is the preferred flour that they always say, but don't go out and buy specialty flour. Regular flour will make do.
You have a question? Do you have a recipe posted for your sourdough?
For my sourdough bread, I do have a recipe posted. I actually have two recipe cards. I have my traditional loaf and then my big loaf, which I do my big loaf all the time. But I also have videos on how to make your own starter, as well as like a tutorial on how to make your very first sourdough bread from start to beginning. Because sourdough is an amazing, delicious, but you can't just wake up and say, hey, I want to make a sourdough bread unless you have your starter. And it takes about a week, give or take a couple of days, depending on how hot or cold your house is, to get it to the right fermentation to make your bread. So I have a bunch of videos on my link, as well as recipe cards for both the starter and to make the bread, because it's delicious. And once you start that journey, you will love it. That's what my mom always says. She goes, you know what? The best thing ever, because I cook all my parents' meals for them and whatnot. But she goes, when you started making sourdough bread, she's like, that's just been the best thing ever. Because it's not just sourdough bread. You make sourdough discard recipes. And I've like scones and pancakes and muffins and cookies, all sorts of things that you use that are just fabulous. Okay, I'm going to turn off my burner right now. We're going to scoop in all of these veggies into my Vitamix. Now you could use an immersion blender as well and blend this up if you want to. I find the Vitamix is going to give me a smoother sauce, but the immersion blender does just wonderful. I used to have an immersion blender until I broke it. I got it at the time and I was like, oh, I'm going to get the cordless one because who wants a cord in their way? Wish I would have stuck with the corded one because I probably wouldn't overused it, but I like blew through the battery and overused it. So to me, I was like, you know what? We're just going to stick to the classic blender.
You have a question? Does the semolina flour taste different than regular?
So semolina flour is a higher quality flour that does make a difference with it. Now, it gives you a softer, more velvety, pasta with a little bit of that kind of stronger flavor of like a pasta flavor to it. And it is nice and lovely, but I might, be there, but I'm going to say you can just make great ones with regular flour. I'm a big proponent of not having to buy specialty ingredients to make things, because nobody wants to run out to like 20 different sources to get something or order something online. And then you have a small amount of something left over. So it does taste well and it is great, but regular flour works well with it.
And can you use multigrain flour to make this pasta?
So multigrain flour is going to give you a different texture and flavor on there. I wouldn't recommend it because it will be a much denser pasta. So, regular white flour is going to work the best. We're going to puree this up. I'm going to use my soup setting on my Vitamix because it's going to give it a slow puree and then it's going to go high. And then we'll pour everything back in there and let it simmer. I'm going to add a little bit of cream to make a nice creamy vegetable base because my kids love a cream sauce. Voila. And now we've got our beautiful thick sauce. Look how thick that is. Isn't that gorgeous, guys? We're going to put it back in there. I'll add a little bit of cream and we're going to just let this simmer on low for just a little bit until we're ready to add our noodles in. And while we're talking about that, I'm going to turn my water up here to high to bring it to a boil because it's really ready to throw these in. And then our chicken will be ready to carve soon because it's been sitting for about 10-15 minutes. So we're going to add in a little bit of cream. You don't need a lot. I like to add in like maybe a fourth to a third of a cup in here because, I just love a good vodka sauce or, those just creamier based pasta sauces on there. So do my kids. Just look how lovely this is. And to think, homemade, easy, not as hard and daunting as it is. You don't have to peel your tomatoes. I know a lot of people, they'll peel them to make their sauces. And I'm like, oh, so much work. Let's add in a little bit of salt here. And then we're going to start dropping in our pasta. So again, make sure your pasta is nice and coated in flour. And we'll do that. And then we'll go check on our sourdough bread in there. But let's get these. Let's check on our bread first. That way, if we got to go over there, because I want to make sure, because once this pasta goes in, you cook it for about 3 minutes. And I still think this might need a few more minutes, but we'll check. Yeah, we've got a very kind of simple melt on it. We don't have it on the air fryer setting, just a traditional bake. So this is going to need a few more minutes, but perfect. I'll say I'll be ready in like 5. But I'm glad I checked because now I have plenty of time to get my pasta in. Make sure your water's on a nice vigorous boil before you start dropping it in because you want it to kind of boil up well. I'm going to start, and I always like to make sure you're swirling it while you add your pasta in, again, to prevent any of it from sticking together. But as long as you've fully coated it with a good amount of flour, it should be good. Now, you don't have to cook up all of your pasta at once. This freezes well, so you can pop it in the freezer. Just put it on like, either Nest or pop it in there and then put it in an airtight bag, like a Ziploc baggie when it's done. But here we go. So I like to just constantly stir it as it's going in there just to keep them from not sticking together. Here we go. And you can already see how much we've got in here, how fast it's going to cook up. Let's add in this next batch. And we'll add in. I'll slide these guys all in here. Beautiful. With fresh pasta, you typically know when it's done is when it starts to float to the top, and that's due to the egg in there. Okay, beautiful. Make sure it's all going in there, and just, again, vigorously stir. That just allows it from sticking together. You can see we've got a good amount here. And again, homemade pasta is much heartier than your store-bought, and I think it's because it's a slightly denser. This again has like 7 eggs in it. Beautiful. We'll give it again. I think it should be good now. I don't need to vigorously stir it as much. And let me grab a spoon here, and we're going to give this a quick taste. Lovely. And then we're going to actually start cutting up our chicken here in just a second. So let me slide over because I can actually do it here on my cutting board. On here. Just going to clear up some room because I've got quite a mess here. My pasta will be ready to come out here in just about a minute because, again, remember, it cooks up really fast. I'm going to just steal a piece here. Delicious. It's super soft and silky. Okay. Still a little hot, but not too bad. Okay. Let me grab my tongs, and then I'll get my chicken on here, and then we'll take our pasta out. The best way I found to get this chicken out is I'm going to just shove my tongs in here all the way through. We're going to lift it up, give it a little drain, hold it up here, and then we'll place it here on your cutting board. And this is our beautiful thing. Let's get our pasta in now that it's all floating to the top. And what I'm going to do, instead of just dumping it out, I'm literally just going to spoon it into my sauce over here. So look at these noodles. Pretty impressive. and simple. You can easily make this in no time at home. But as you can see how much noodles these are, so a little bit goes a long way. But they are just beautiful and super soft. They're nice and velvety and smooth. Sometimes, then that again is coming from having to like really knead the dough.
You have a question. Can you go over how you season the chicken?
Yes. So for our chicken, what I did is in a bowl, I mixed together olive oil, garlic. So like I want to say about a third cup of olive oil, garlic, about a fourth cup of garlic, a good amount of garlic salt, rosemary and black pepper, and fresh lemon juice. And you then what you're going to do, and this is the kind of crazy fun part, is you'll take it up and you're going to push it underneath the skin. So you've got to actually put your hand and make your hand divide the skin away from the chicken. And you're going to scrub, like put it all in there all the way around. Then I rubbed it on top, and then I stuffed my chicken with onions and lemons to give that nice fragrant flavor for it. And it is going to be delicious. Okay, look at this. Beautiful. On here, let me grab some tongs. We're done with this. I'm going to turn that off. And since we don't need this anymore, I'm going to slide this over here so that I'll have a place to put my garlic bread here in just a second. But look how beautiful this pasta is. And you can imagine, remember, this is chock full of onions, carrots, garlics, peppers, tomatoes. So it's just a vegetable rich sauce, but it tastes so decadent, like a rich kind of vodka sauce. Beautiful. Okay, let's go get our garlic bread out of the oven. Then we'll carve up our chicken and we'll get ready to eat for it. And remember, when you make a whole chicken, I roast mine at 425 for 75 minutes. And then you got to let it sit for 15 minutes. So it's not something that you can just whip up thing, but it's a lot of inactive work. Beautiful. Look at our gorgeous garlic bread on our sourdough toast or sourdough bread that we had left over. I'm always a big fan of reusing my sourdough. Don't ever want it to go to waste. So let me slide this here. And we're going to get ready to serve up, guys, because we're just about done. But again, our sourdough garlic bread over there, you just use your leftover sourdough bread, slice it up, spread a little bit of butter on it, and then sprinkle some garlic salt, mozzarella cheese, Parmesan cheese, and a little bit more garlic salt, and then just cook it in the oven. Okay, guys, let's get ready to serve up dinner here. I'm going to get a plate for our dinner. And then I'll cut off a piece of chicken on here. So let me get my first kind of piece of chicken here served up.
So you have a question real quick. Could you add some pasta water to the sauce if you needed it?
You definitely could if you wanted to make it like slightly thinner or whatnot. Sometimes I add my pasta sauce in there. Sometimes or my pasta water in there. I'm just trying to get through this. I'm using my bread knife, which is not the right knife to use for this, but I'm going to get it cut through, guys. There we go. Look at that beautiful chicken thigh here. So yes, you could definitely use pasta sauce, especially to thin it out on there. And you could use that in place of putting cream in there if you wanted to have a lighter variation. Okay, let's get our dinner served up. So I'm going to grab a nice helping of our homemade pasta. Look at this, guys. We're going to put it on here. Beautiful. This is our homemade pasta made with 7 eggs in it. And we rolled it out, did a fettuccine cut. We made our homemade sauce with our, sauteed tomatoes, carrots, onions, peppers, pureed them. And then we're going to add a slice of our roasted chicken to have on top so that you have nice, lovely chicken in there. And then, of course, a slice of our sourdough garlic bread for just a simple, delicious, easy meal made in no time. And again, Their chicken we have with it is rosemary and lemon and garlic as a seasonings. We roast it in the oven at 425 for 75 minutes, and it will be delicious. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can go to that link and search for what we made. So we've got our homemade pasta and pasta sauce and chicken, and you guys can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my cutting board, I've got my big saute pan, as well as my Vitamix and my pasta makers, all the different gadgets I use in my kitchen I have in there in case you're interested in what we use. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.